but he was older than Jenny. Of course, that didn't mean anything. Age and university had nothing to do with one another. There were as many 50-year-old students doing their first degrees as there were 19-year-old geniuses doing PhD research for the university. All right, maybe not as many as each other, but the demographics of this university were indeed that varied. What this man didn't have was a student ID, which he would have needed to scan into the library. He also hadn't collected a visitor's pass. I'd have remembered him. As a matter of fact, I do. This is my library, and it shut 10 minutes ago, so I suggest you take your face-sucking elsewhere. What can I say? When the mood strikes, the mood strikes, Jenny protested. How about you tell that to security? Because unless you want me to call them or squirt you again, you should leave. You have dorms, for God's sake. Jenny's face flushed red. The man she was with, however, he was all stern, smoldering looks, lips pursed, short black hair falling lightly just above a pair of cutting, hazel eyes, green flecked with gold. Dangerous. My hackles rose, a shiver climbing along the length of my spine. When Jenny started moving toward me, I stepped aside to let them both pass by me, and of the library. But she turned around when she was through the doors. You should lighten up a bit, she said. And you shouldn't be giving it up in a library, I shot back. Whatever. I guess I'd be Aggie too if I had resigned to being a sexless spinster at 28. Asshole! I squirted her with the bottle again, but she put her hands up and shielded her face, moving quickly out of my range. When they were gone, I slammed the door shut, locked it, turned the lights off and went back to my desk, setting the spray bottle down where I'd found it. He had a point. Spraying water in a library was probably the stupidest thing a librarian, custodian of books and knowledge, could do. But they didn't know, and didn't need to know, that the bottle was enchanted. There wasn't any water in it at all. The magic of the bottle just made people think there was water being sprayed at them. All right, so maybe I didn't have a right to consider myself an ex-mage if I went around carrying enchanted items, but just because I wasn't hunting anymore didn't mean I couldn't allow myself a couple of small, magical luxuries. Maybe if I wasn't living off a meager salary in one of the most expensive cities in the world, I'd be a little more reserved with my gifts. But I had chosen to move to London of all places, and that meant I needed to take a couple of shortcuts in life if I wanted to make it a little more bearable. I sat at my desk, huffing away the frustration, and caught a glimpse of the picture I kept standing next to my monitor. The desk was a cluttered mess, to be sure. Papers to file everywhere, pens, some in working order, others not, most without tops, scattered around. A mug from which many copious amounts of English tea had been consumed ever since I moved to the continent 18 months ago. But it was my mess. I knew where everything was, knew which pens worked and which didn't. And I didn't keep any personal belongings there, except for that one picture. It was me and Shannon, my sister. A fond smile swept across my face, tugging at the corners of my lips. My heart gave off a series of hard, almost audible thumps at the sight of her. I was 2 years Shannon's junior, but we were the splitting image of each other regardless. Thick, long red hair ran strong in our family, as did slightly paler skin and eyes as green as emeralds, thanks entirely to our family's strong Irish heritage. I took a little more after my father than Shannon did, though. My features were a little curvier than hers. The apples of my cheeks were a little more pronounced than hers, and tended to redden rapidly for no apparent reason. Perpetually flushed was my brand, a physical quirk visible no matter what expression the rest of my face was trying to convey. Though we looked slightly different, we at least shared that same always flushed look that identified us as sisters. Tears were starting to build. I blinked hard, took a deep breath, and got back to work, realizing only when I was done with Carla's work, separating the currently singular French Revolution into two, that I noticed the box. It sat curiously underneath the reception desk, out of sight, almost intentionally so. I reached over, pulled it out of hiding, and read the label. Fuck!